Hello, one and all. Welcome back to The Angry Author. As always, I am Jeb, your lead ranter, host, whatever you want to call me. It's fine. Today, the subject that I want to dive into is one that honestly I think it is a pretty terrifying prospect. Now, albeit I tend to err on the side of pessimism over optimism on most things. So I'm not gonna lie about that, but I will preface it by mentioning something specifically. For those of you listening who have ever watched the TV series Black Mirror, first off, if you haven't seen it, if you've got Netflix, go on there, check it out. It's a great anthology series. They have some really good episodes. A lot of science fiction based premises. Basic everyday things kind of take it to an extreme. Things take twists and turns. It's a really good show, and I would definitely recommend that to anybody that hasn't seen it. Now, to those who have, and I'll try and go through this without spoiling anything for the people that haven't seen it and would want to check it out. There's an episode called Nosedive, and the focus of that episode is social credit. And by that, in the sense that it's tackled in the show, much like you'll see today, if you go outside, everybody is pretty much glued to their smartphone. But the premise of this is everybody is pretty much tied in to a social app. It has features like Instagram and things like that where you can post photos with little captions and people will rate it 1 to 5 stars, and you can feel about how wonderful a person you are because people that you barely know are approving of your life and the things that you're doing in it. Dumb shit like that. But it aggregates those ratings as well as daily encounters. So you're heading to work in the morning, you're a little bit late, maybe you cut somebody off. They're going to be able to find you in the app because of your proximity to them at the time that you cut them off. And they can, basically give you a piss poor rating, which lowers your overall score. With that, it affects, a lot of things that you can do and how people look at you. Because they'll see, from 1 to 5, you might be, a 2.8. Not great. not really what anybody is looking for in that. But not only do you have that creepy kind of vibe going on where everybody around you is being judgmental of every action that you take through every minute of the day, every word that comes out of your mouth. Pardon me, I got a bubble in my throat. So see, you could give me a 1 star on that. Bubble in throat during podcast, very unprofessional. Screw this douche. But everything, you have to be on your toes. So you're basically being a fake person anytime that you're out in public, anytime that you're interacting with people. And I'm sure there are those of you out there right now that are like, but Jeb, I know so many people that do that now. They're plastic. They're fake all the time. I get it. I get it. But it's just, it's just something to think about and what kind of an impact that kind of system has on people's lives, that they become so stressed, so riddled with anxiety over the possibility of getting negative feedback in a public sense. And people, some of you out there might be wondering, well, that's good and well, but are you just going to sit here and talk about a fictional TV show? No. But it is a nice segue to something that most of you have probably heard about, which is the building implementation in China of a social credit system. Now, this is just me talking about talking about things that are going on, giving my thoughts on it. I'm not saying that I ever think that the United States or any other country is going to go that far down the route, but never say never. So who knows? But the idea behind the system in China is basically to build what they call public trust. Are you a trustworthy person? Are you an untrustworthy person? Which on the surface, if you take it for that, then you would almost say, okay, well that's not so bad. I need a contractor to come and rebuild my bathroom. I got 2 bids in. This guy, according to his feedback, is just a piece of shit. He's always late. He's always over budget. Never gets anything done anywhere near on time. Does shoddy work. Versus the other guy who, is not at the highest end of the spectrum, but he's got a good reputation. He shows up on time. He puts in the work, and he does what he says he's going to do. Obviously, you're going to lean towards that guy. You're going to want to have that kind of information. So in a sense like that, I get it. But then you've got sites like Angie's List and stuff like that where you can already look at feedback for people in those kind of situations. And most things where you're paying somebody for goods or for a service, there's some kind of feedback. There's some kind of rating somewhere on their website, on Facebook, on Yelp, anywhere. You can get a pretty good idea overall of the value that they bring. Now, if it's a smaller business, it can be a little bit trickier because, and this comes from the mindset of an indie author, you put something out there, you can get a handful of really positive reviews, but it could be somebody that you don't like, or I'm sorry, somebody that doesn't like you, just decides, you know what, I'm going to leave a shitty rating. Might not even write a review, might just put a rating up there just to bring it down. People do that, and anybody, I don't think anybody out there is naive enough to believe that doesn't happen. But, it is what it is. And most people, myself included, if I'm judging a business and I see bad ratings, bad reviews, but they're not very specific, or it's just general trash talking, I'm pretty much going to, I'm going to disregard most of that. Because, if you have a bad experience enough to want to write a review or to rate a person or a business publicly, you're going to go into detail about it to try and help other people avoid that kind of situation. Same thing for when you see ratings that are left with no review. I get it. People don't always take the time to write a review. They don't always want to, and that's one thing, but it carries less weight to me when I'm looking at it. If somebody rates something a 1 star, but they can't be bothered to actually tell you what was wrong or what they didn't like, to me, I don't know. And having worked in retail, having been in a position where you were looking at feedback that customers left for different people throughout the store, you can always tell when people were just having a bad day, or when they were just being unreasonable. It is never hard to spot stuff like that. And of course, I do have a little bit, having been in that type of position, I've honed my eye for it over the years, but it's easy for anybody with any common sense to look at it and say that person's they're full of shit. But I don't want to get too far sidetracked. But getting back to the idea with the social credit system in China, the basic idea is to kind of have it like a credit score. So if you have a poor credit score, you go to the bank to get a car loan or a mortgage, you're probably not going to get approved. And that's one thing, because the bank is looking at it as, well, we've got this money to lend, but this person, there's a high probability we're not going to see that money back. At least not all of it. If it's on a house, having to go through the hassles and the expenditures that come with a foreclosure and things like that, it's not in their best interests. And that's not to say that you can't have somebody with a poor credit score from mistakes that they made in the past that have been trying to fix it, and are in a better place financially and trying to get ahead. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people like that get screwed out because of it. So, I mean, it's not a perfect system, but this social credit system in China, credit apparently, and I've looked at articles from Wired and from Business Insider, and this is something that I've been following on the periphery for a few years. I believe China first announced this back in 2014, somewhere around there. And, I was killing a little bit of time and came across that episode of Black Mirror again. And I said, well, shit, it's an interesting idea. I hate the idea. I hate what it stands for, but it is interesting. It's something that can spark debate. But just the idea that things that aren't always in your control can tank this quote unquote social credit score. What really scares me is some of the stuff that you can be prohibited from or be subjected to if your score dips past a certain point. For instance, air and rail travel. Part of the plan, and I believe it's something that China has already implemented, is restricting their travel. That alone is a scary thought to me. When you have a government that says, you cannot travel here, you cannot travel via this method of travel. I get it if there's a plague outbreak, if Captain Trips is coming, if there's zombies at the gate. I get it. You don't have to tell me. At that point, I'm pretty much going to be hunkered down, waiting for the shit to blow over. But just in general, that's just really shitty to me. I mean, there's no better way to articulate that, because it's an infuriating thought to think that you live your life however you see fit. And I'll say right off the bat, I have more of a libertarian view on things like that. If the things that you do involve yourself, other consenting adults, you're not going out of your way to hurt anybody, to steal from anybody, to make anybody else's situation worse, then, do what you want to do. I might not, I don't want to go out, and walk my son in after school and have you sitting on a patio next to me smoking a blunt the size of my forearm just because my son's there. I don't want him exposed to that. Aside from that, do what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you relax, by all means, smoke a fatty, get high off your ass. Just know the time and the place. That would be as much as I would try to encroach. So people can do what they want to, and you're gonna, you're gonna base your personal opinions of people based off of what you see them do. So, it's easy enough on a personal level, but do I think that person should be consistently subjected to public outrage, public scorn, having some completely asinine, fucking idiotic system of social credit hit to the point where this person can't travel? I mean, say they live here in Greenville, North Carolina, but say that they're originally from, Oregon, and say they have a family member that falls ill or dies. Naturally, the quickest way for them to get there is going to be an airplane. Oh, but no. Old Jake over there on the corner saw you smoking weed the other day, and the negative rating that you hit from that got you to the point where you can no longer get on an airplane. You're forbidden from air travel for the foreseeable future. And again, I know that this is nothing that's going on in the United States yet. Just spitballing, just throwing out some ideas. Stuff like that really bothers me, because that is authoritarianism to an extent. Not that authoritarianism is ever really a good thing, but to get to that extent is when you have authoritarianism for the sake of authoritarianism. It's going out of your way to make everybody in the general public a snitch and a fraud. And it just, the more you get into it, the more it's like a rotten onion. There's just fucked up layer after fucked up layer, and it just is. What's at the center of it? I mean, what do you get at the, what is the end game for this type of plan? It's just, the idea of not even being aware, going to a train station or an airport to buy a ticket, they put in your information. Sorry, asshole. We can't sell you a ticket. You can't do this shit. You're done. You better walk or ride a bike somewhere. Better go buy your ass a car. But another thing that is on the books for China's social credit program is throttling your internet speeds. And that's been a topic that's been discussed in the U.S. off and on over the last handful of years. Not specifically the social credit aspect, but just, depending on your internet behaviors, depending on, of course, like with cellular data, the busier the network gets, you could get throttled. The more data that you've used, you can get throttled. But the idea of it being arbitrary, and this is another thing where when you really get into what could happen, is frightening. Because say you're in China, they are full into this, which they want to have done, I believe, by 2020. So next year, you are somebody like me, you are my Chinese equivalent, criticizing this idea. Maybe you've got a blog, a YouTube channel, whatever you've got going on, you're speaking out against this. They just throttle your internet. Maybe they take it away altogether, effectively silencing your voice. You're a dissident, they take that voice away from you. What are you going to do? You're going to go out in the street? You're going to print up flyers and hand them out? I mean, what the government should, that is the fact that there aren't, and I get that the culture is drastically different, than what most of us here in the U.S. are accustomed to. But the fact that such a thought exists and there are not people out in the street protesting that, and that's not to say that maybe there are. I haven't looked deep enough into that yet. But it's just mind-boggling to think about stuff like that. Another thing is if you spend too much time playing video games or wasting money on what they consider frivolous purchases, could get you kicked off the internet, throttled on the internet, a part of everything else that goes into this. They also list spreading fake news, everybody's favorite two-word buzz phrase, fake news. The problem is who determines if it's fake or not. Because there's a glut of topics here in the United States that we could get into on this topic that could be qualified as fake news. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to get into a side political argument over any of this stuff. But the bottom line is, who are the arbiters of truth in this situation? Is it the government? Do they maintain their status as just the ultimate authority on everything? So that gives them something else that they can attack you for and take your social status down a peg? I'm sorry. That's a gray area, and it's like everything else. It's dangerous. Another issue that people could fall prey to under this is having yourself or your children banned from the best schools. Now, as a father, that's something that really, not the other stuff doesn't, but that really pisses me off. The fact that if I do something that the government, that the system sees as counterproductive or untrustworthy, that my son can be barred from attending schools that are rated as being better than others. That is horseshit. And the more you think about it, you just kind of wonder if it goes full bore into this, how many people there are just going to sit back and accept it? And you might be saying, "Well, Jeb, you're naive. They're used to living under a much more authoritarian system than we are. So maybe not. But at the root of it, we're all human beings, and the thought that a government entity thinks that this is acceptable. I mean, we're not talking about if you go out and murder somebody, if you go out and burn down houses and buildings. It could be because you play fucking video games too much. You spread a news article that they deem is fake. It could be loaded top to bottom with facts, maybe just has an opinionated slant. All this stuff goes into that. This is not like defending somebody that was caught red-handed with video of them murdering 17 hitchhikers. This is all bullshit. And it's unbelievable to me to think that a major country, which, I mean, China is, they've got a huge economy right now. They're a big populous country, has this much in the works, some of which is already going on, been publicized. It blows my mind. And then following on the getting banned from the best schools, you can be prevented from getting what they consider to be the best jobs. No management jobs, no big bank jobs. It does specify in this Business Insider article that fraud and embezzlement would have a big effect, and something like that I'm on board with. If you were convicted after going on trial and being proven guilty of committing fraud or embezzlement, that's something that should stick with you. That's not the same as playing too much video games. That's not the same as any of this other stuff. That's legitimate crime. I would expect that to stick with somebody. So I don't have a problem with that portion of it. But getting back to the travel piece, can keep you out of the best hotels. It's just one of those other things where, personally, it's twofold for me on this because, one, whenever we travel, I'm not ever concerned with staying at a 5-star hotel. I really don't care. Personally, I don't. What I don't agree with is the fact that if I want to, then goddamn it, I should have the right to. If I want to spend an exorbitant amount of money to stay in a hotel, that's my right. I should be able to. And then you get in the whole argument, well, they're a private business, they can do what they want, blah, 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 the right to refuse service. Okay, that's good and well. But if I show up well-dressed, in a suit, with a tie, and I've got the money to book a room, take my money, give me the goddamn room. This shit with this social credit is just... Again, you go back to the fact that it's just... to me, it's amazing how out in the open the authoritarianism is with this, to try and coerce people to behave the way that they want to. And another punishment, getting your dog taken away. So if you walk your dog without a leash, which granted, I don't know about everywhere in the United States, where we stay at, it's illegal. You can't have your dog out not on a leash. But they can have their pet confiscated. So the question with all this to me becomes, and right now it's basically a piecemeal of different organizations running the tracking on this stuff, because a lot of it doesn't seem to tie in directly together, which makes it just seem like a random series of laws, which is one thing. But if this all gets pulled into one primary system, how much is one area going to affect the other one? Because like I said, fraud, embezzlement, actual crimes, and I'm not sure what happens in China right now when people are found guilty of that, but no shit, that should stick with you. You can't just walk into a huge bank and say, I want to apply for the branch manager position here, and then have them look at your resume and be like, oh, well, your last job, oh, look, you're that son of a bitch that was on TV. You were accused of embezzlement. We're not going to fucking hire you. Who would? I don't care how sparkling your resume is. It doesn't. If you had a similar job and you committed embezzlement, fuck, get out of here. Not a job for you here. But then they also mention publicly being named a bad citizen. So basically, public shaming. Which, I mean, what is this fucking third grade on the playground? I mean, seriously? That is ridiculous. And I mean, the concern is whenever there's stuff like this that gets pushed, you're always going to have people that become overzealous and fanatical about it. So years down the road, if all of this gets fully implemented, I mean, who's to say there's not going to be a group of brainwashed government cronies running around looking for people that are on these lists to try and intimidate them to do whatever because they saw them on a public list of quote-unquote bad citizens. It's just... and then, of course, China already does have a blacklist prototype, and people have been published. Not published, because that's not a bad thing. Have been punished because of this already. They do actually list a case from 2015 where a lawyer was on the list. Not sure whether or not he was aware of it before, but he tried to purchase plane tickets. He was on a work trip. He was trying to buy tickets to get back home. And he couldn't buy a ticket to get home. What the fuck is that? Now, granted, I don't know all the specifics about his case, and I don't want to make this a 4-hour episode just to delve into this. But, I mean, does that not give anybody else pause? You're on a business trip, assuming it goes well. You go out, you have a steak, you have a couple of beers. Yeah. See you guys in the morning at the airport. You get to the airport, plan to go home, see your wife, your kids, whatever you've got waiting for you. Get to the airport and you find out you can't buy a ticket. Why? Because your social credit score is too low. You are forbidden from buying a plane ticket. What the fuck am I supposed to do? Do I live at the airport now? Can I buy a boat ticket? Yeah, it doesn't say where this gentleman was when he found out, so I don't know where the hell he was trying to get back home from. I mean, is he supposed to walk? Ride a bike? I mean, could you get a taxi if your score's too low? I mean, what are the bounds for this? You've got everybody watching everybody else. What you do when you're online. I mean, are all the companies that are, say, your telecommunications companies that operate within China, are they all going to be forced? I'm sure they will be, into giving records to the government so that all of this stuff can be verified, so that they can look for reasons to dock people points, to blacklist them. It's insane. This is insane. Absolute insanity. Completely mind-boggling. And it gets to the point where you're at a level of forced censorship, because you're either going to be who you are, for better or for worse, and take the consequences, and then who the hell knows how that's going to... I mean, an offhand comment could cost you the chance to buy a house, to put your kid in a good school, to get a good job. I mean, it's batshit crazy. I mean, we think right now that it's bad in the United States because you've got people that can't agree over gender pronouns and things like that. You've got fights over censorship, which are asinine. Censorship is never a good idea. I don't care what a person's saying. They've got the right to say it. And my point of view is this. If somebody's standing up and they're saying something under their First Amendment rights, and it is completely fucking stupid, or if it is bigoted, if it's homophobic, if it's anything that we as a whole tend to think, well, that's a really stupid and shitty outlook, at least people are going to know now. They're going to be able to look at that person and say, they're a fucking idiot. I do not want to be associated with this person in any way, shape, or form. Let that be out in the public. They put it there themselves. That's their choice. That's not the government using stuff, using your search history, using anything else that's occurred in your life, and outing you for whatever reason. That's you taking your free speech and outing yourself as a moron. So no, censorship is not good. It's never good. It's not good. I knew that when I was a kid, and people wanted to censor music. No, you don't. You don't get to tell somebody else what they can or cannot say in a piece of music that they've created. Sorry, fuck off. You don't get to do that. I mean, this podcast will be up on YouTube, not with an actual video, just a little still picture and whatever. It's not going to be, I will never have the opportunity to monetize it via YouTube because I say fuck and shit and goddamn. I don't care. I choose to do that, knowing the consequence of that. That's fine. You know, doesn't make a difference to me. I don't care about that. It's my choice. And I guess that's the difference where it comes into the culture here in America. By and large, we don't like being told what to do. And I wish to God that, I really don't, but that they would ever try to implement something like that here. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the absolute, what it would turn into if they tried to force something like this out onto the people? Again, I'm not saying that I believe that they're going to at any point. Just think about it. That's the whole point of me talking about any of this, is just to think, to create some kind of a conversation around it. We don't have to have a solution because, thank God we're not facing any of that just yet. Only we kind of are. When you look at the amount of censorship that's going around on different social media formats, and different things like that. I believe every person, every citizen of this country should be able to say whatever they want to. And what people always forget is that freedom of speech, I mean, really, it comes down to, the government can't tell you what not to say, with a few exceptions. You can't threaten the life of the president. You can't go into a movie theater right when the film starts and yell fire and cause a panic and a stampede. You can't incite people to violence. There are things like that. Regardless of that, you're never free from the consequences of what you say. You could have some off-the-wall, really, really hateful thoughts on anything, and you're free to say them. But if they're put out there in the public, anybody else can see it. And if it's something really bad, it's going to make its way around. And people are going to know exactly what kind of person you are and what you stand for. But one of the other things that bothers me is that there can be so much slander of people that gets around, and then you'll have, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that are up in arms against a person, not ever really knowing what they did or what they said, if it was anything. Because it's easy in this day and age to whip people up into a fervor with nothing. You don't have to have proof of anything. Just an allegation is enough to get a lot of shit rolling in a certain person's direction. Any person, anybody you want to. Of course, there are those of us who are typically level-headed and rational, and we're going to say, okay, well, if they did this, where's the proof? I need to see a screenshot or a post where they said this, video of a speech where they said it, audio of them saying it, some kind of proof that definitively shows that they did what you said they did. Because no offense, your word doesn't mean fuck all to me, nor should mine to you. Nothing that I say here or on any other episode, you shouldn't listen to it like, well, Jeb's right. He said it, goddammit, it has to be true. No, fuck that. Disagree. Be unsure and go out there and look. Just start thinking about stuff, Like I said, this is not any kind of a hidden thing. People have been talking about this off and on for years. It just really clicked in my head today. Like I said, I was watching that episode of Black Mirror, and I said, well, shit, I'm going to go and sit down and have a discussion about this. So, I mean, it's, at this point, it's not about finding the solution. It's just about having the discussion. And I mean, the pitiful thing, especially in the United States in 2019, is the fact that everything is there's so much division politically. that you can't really even have a discussion in a lot of circumstances with somebody on the other side of the spectrum and actually have it be a constructive discussion. I don't even want to say an argument, just a debate where somebody can counter with their own ideas and can actually have a coherent conversation about not only what they think, but why they think that. Everything now degrades into name calling, into whatever you want to do. It accomplishes nothing. And this day and age where you can go on Twitter and say something that is, honestly, relatively innocuous for some of the stuff that I've seen firsthand, and people will blow up about it, but then they won't have a discussion as to, well, why did you react this way? I just said that in my personal preference, Dunkin' Donuts is trash. I like Krispy Kreme. Then the fucking shitstorm starts. They'll block you. They'll do this. That. It's ridiculous that people get so bent out of shape, but they will never back up why. People don't feel compelled to actually have to explain themselves. And if you have an honest core belief and somebody ridicules you and questions you about that, I don't necessarily believe that you owe them an explanation. But when you attack somebody for something, and then they question why you did it, you're not being attacked. Words are not violence. If you're not willing to actually stand up for what you believe in and what you say, then don't say it. You don't get to spray paint the side of the White House, metaphorically. I'm not telling anybody to go do that, but you don't get to put your words out there in that public a way and then just hide from it. It's cowardice. If you truly believe that somebody's evil, somebody's bad, and you want to call them out for it, do it. Have facts. Have some kind of reasoning to back that up. Because people are going to call you out on it. And they should. You're the same thing. Freedom of speech, you're not free from consequences of what you say. You look at, and I'm not going to get into the politics of this. Not gonna go down this road, but you look at the things that happen with the kids from Covington, from the school. The kids were in D.C. The whole thing happened. All these people jumping out, talking an endless tirade of shit against children. They're high schools. They're still kids. They're teenagers. A lot of teenagers are dumb shits. I know. I was one. I can say that. But just the amount of vitriol that was coming out over a small portion of a clip, and then you see, I forgot, the full video from one of the cameras on site was 2 hours, roundabouts, and you see the full image of what happened, and it didn't fit what everybody else was saying happened. All the people in the Twitterverse that were throwing up comments didn't match what they said. And now you have, I know CNN and possibly MSNBC or something. There are lawsuits that are being filed for big, big money. And if I was a betting man, which I am on the side, I would put my money on an out-of-court settlement. And that absolutely should happen, especially if you consider yourself to be a journalist and you work for a major news outlet. I don't care what you think about CNN. I'm not a big fan of CNN. They're a big known commodity. Doesn't mean that they're good, doesn't mean they're bad. They're just a big name. If you work for a company like that and you come out and publicly make incendiary comments about something where you don't even have all the proof of what happened, game over. You should be on the hook for everything coming your fucking way. I have got no pity for anybody that speaks out of turn in a way that could bring harm to somebody else because they don't know the facts. I could be wrong about some of the stuff I said about China's social credit system, but I'm not sitting here saying for anything bad to happen to China, its people, or its government. I'm just having a discussion about it. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit it and I'll move on. But you cannot come out and say some of the shit that was said in that specific circumstance and then not expect repercussions for it. It's just not the way that the world works. And it blows my mind there are people that fail to understand that. They believe that they are free to say whatever they want without consequence. They want everybody else to be censored but they don't want that same rule to come back and bite them in the ass. I hate to tell you, Buttercup, that's what's going to happen. That is exactly what's going to happen. That is the only thing that could possibly happen. It always comes around. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but this whole, rules for thee but not for me, I don't play that shit. If you're going to come out and tell me that I have to do something a certain way or else this, then you goddamn well better be doing the exact same thing that you're trying to make me do. This is not, by and large, this is not a country of people that are just going to do what they're told. Are there a lot of seemingly brain-dead people that will and won't ask a question? Oh, yeah. And it's always been that way. It's not the internet, it's not social media that did all this. There have always been people that are simple-minded and will be fixed on to one target no matter what because they were told to. That's humanity. That's the way of the world. That's the way that it's been for who knows how long. I mean, there were probably fucking dinosaurs that went through the same thing. I know, before anybody gets all pissy and sends me a message, I know dinosaurs weren't fucking humans. The point is, you get enough of any animal around, you're going to have a herd mentality. This is the way that it is. Of course, typically in animals, wolves, cows, goats, whatever the hell, pick an animal. It's because of year after year after year after year of breeding and just genetic instinct. Maybe it's the same way in humans. Maybe somebody's great-great-great-grandfather was a mouthy bastard that never had any idea what he was really talking about and would never back up any of his claims. I don't know. I don't see what the overall good that does the human race is, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. It's okay to disagree. We should disagree. If I woke up one day and saw a headline that says everybody agrees across the board, I would be scared shitless. I'd be like, I don't agree. Even if I did, I'm going to say, nope, I don't agree. Fuck nope, I don't agree with this. There's nothing wrong with a dissenting opinion. So few things in life are black and white. There are shades of gray everywhere. There's nuance to so many different things. Yet when you hear people discuss it, it's always an either or. Well, if you don't think this, then you must think that. No, goddammit, I don't. Just because that's the connection you make doesn't mean that anybody else makes that connection. And that's what, don't lock yourself into an echo chamber. Do not only converse online or in person only with people that are lockstep with everything that you believe. Because no matter how wrong you are, you're never going to know. Because you're surrounded by yes men, yes women, people that are just going to just regurgitate things that back up what you believe in. It's not good for anybody. Have a conversation, have a debate. Don't fight anybody. I'm not saying to go out and get into a fist fight. Have a debate with somebody that you disagree with on an issue. Say, state where you stand on it, why you believe that. Let them do the same. If you guys want to counter each other's points, that's what you're supposed to do. That is what is supposed to happen. I hate to be the one to tell certain people this, but there is not one side, one political party, one ideology that has got everything fucking right ever in the history of mankind. And it sure as fuck isn't going on now. Have a conversation. Find somebody that's dressed in a way that you're just like, you know what? I that asshole I'm not going to get along with. Have a conversation. I don't know what it is, and I'm guilty of it too, especially when you're online. If you're somewhere like on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever, it's so easy to see something that somebody types out and get pissed off because you don't always know the context. You don't know what their mindset was when they said it. And your first response is anger. I get it. I've been there. I'm not going to condemn anybody for that. We've got to move past the first reaction. If your first reaction to everything is just pure anger and you want to lash out at somebody, take a breath. Take a breath. And I'm not saying that because somebody's going to come up with some extreme, rhetorical situation. Well, what if they're setting babies on fire? Am I just supposed to? No, God damn it, you stupid son of a bitch. You're not supposed to. Stop creating these ridiculous hypotheticals and just focus on what I'm saying. Take a breath, step back, think. Because there's not always a lot of that going around these days. Think. Think about what they're saying. Think about how that makes you feel. Think about what you think about whatever the topic is that they were discussing. I mean, honestly, I think in a lot of situations, people have a lot more common ground than we realize, because the first instinct is to trash somebody. And then you get that herd mentality going, and they say, oh, well, this guy said something, and then these 3 people are jumping in and giving him shit. I'm going to jump in too. And the next thing you know, that turns into 10, and then 100, and then 10,000 people. Think. Just stop and think. I'm not going to tell anybody that their opinions are wrong. Unless we're having a debate, then I might try to explain why I don't think they're right. But, at the end of the day, that's just a way to convey ideas. And, there are too few people doing that, and there's too much interference with stuff like that going on. There's too much attempted censorship. Let people say whatever they want to say. Put it out in the open, and then, we can all see what they really stand for. And if it's something that's awful, guess what? They're not magically going to find 1 million followers and take over the country. No, they're not. They're going to be publicly embarrassed, and they're going to be shunned if they legitimately say or advocate for something that is horrendous or asinine. No one person gets to be the arbiter of truth for everyone else. It doesn't work that way. We are all individuals. We are all, and when I say all, I'm using that freely in this specific circumstance. We're all capable of independent thought. You just have to step back and do what I've said 35 times in like the last 10 seconds. Just think. Use your brain, put it to work. Think. Don't run off of emotion. You cannot run, but I know it gets glorified in movies and things like that. Somebody gets angry and then they fly off the handle and they start beating the shit out of everybody and they kill the bad guys. Great. It's a movie. Movies are not real life. I cannot believe in this day and age I need to tell adults that, but I know for a fact there are adults out there that need to hear that. Think. You cannot let emotion dictate everything that you do in life. You have to think. Anyway, I've pretty much run my throat dry here, and I've said my part on everything. So I thank everybody for listening to that prolonged rant. I am now the podcast rather is now available on iTunes. Of course, if you found it here, then you know that. If not, it's available on iTunes, Spotify, Red Circle, which is a very good up-and-coming podcast hosting site, SoundCloud, and of course on my YouTube channel. I don't do video. I've had a couple of requests too, but I don't like having to hear my own voice this long, let alone having to look at myself. So I wouldn't hold my breath for that at any point. But since I am a writer, right, and I'll wait till the tail end here like I always do. Last December, I released a novella, a short form. I think it's around 100 pages, give or take. But it's 3 stories. It's a horror anthology. I am in the early stages now of audiobook production for that. I've got a narrator. I just approved the first 15 minutes today, so they're going to be working on getting the rest of it finished up, and that will be available through Amazon, Audible, iTunes. Of course, that won't be until later in the summer, but it is in the works. A lot of stuff going on in and out, here and there, whatever. But for those that are interested in horror anthologies, or just like free things to read, if you visit my website at www.jebbohn.net, just JEBBOHN.net, it'll take you to my landing page. You sign up for my newsletter. I send out maybe one email a month. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I'm well past a month at this point. I need to send one out. But sign up for that. I won't spam you. Once you sign up for it, you'll be directed to a link where, in the digital format of your choice, you can download my horror anthology free of charge. It's not a limited time thing where you can download it and you'll have it for 7 days and it disappears. You download it, it's yours. That's all there is to it. Just trying to reach more people, trying to promote myself as an indie author. That is a very, very important thing to do. But wherever you're listening to this from, be it from YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, anywhere else, be sure to leave comments. You can email me at jebbohn@gmail.com if you've got comments specifically about what we discussed here today with the social credit system, with censorship. Let me know what you think. Of course, if you're on YouTube, you can just leave a comment. Feel free to leave a like. Be sure to subscribe through whichever service that you're following me on. If you want to try a different one, hit me up. You can visit my homepage on the website that has links to everywhere that you can find this and everything else that I work on. Spoiler alert, it's primarily books. But anyway, I thank you guys for sticking around today. I hope that everybody's having an absolutely great, I'm going to say weekend because it's Saturday afternoon right now, going into Saturday evening. So I hope everybody's doing great. Appreciate you guys sticking around and listening to me run off at the mouth for so long, and I will talk to all of you next time. Take care.